Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you're having a very good Friday. We have Tiny Demolition Lover on. Great to see you. I hope you're well up there in Scotland. We have Adrian, we have Norflinger, we have Colin, Chatty Rat, Quinton, Audrey. Great to see you, Audrey. Hope you're well. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. Michelle, Derek, Eddie, Niesa. Great to have you on. We have Killer, great to have you on moderating. Hope you're well. We have also Roisin, great to see Roisin. CGM, great to have you on. We have the Mad Monk, also Marcel. Aslan, great to see you. Hugh, great to have you on. Raven 1983 Witch, great to have you on too. Casper, great to see you. Mega Harry Bomb, great to have you on. Smashed on arrival as usual, fantastic. We also have Hattie, Inconsequential, Seven Bear Brown, great to see you. Young Ralph, great to have you on. Valerie, Mark, Max, Daily Blaze, great to see you. Hope you're well. Haven't been talking to you in a long time. It'd be great to catch up with you once again. Hope you're well. SD White, great to see you. Cyber Crowd, great to have you on. And so many more. So I hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you had a good week. And hope you've been monitoring Boris Johnson's antics and the fact that he's run away to Ukraine. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Yes, run away to Ukraine to avoid showing its face at a at a campaign for the Tories at a by-election. But before we get to that, of course, remember to smash the like button as you come on, and you can support the channel by hitting me with a super chat, and I'll read it out on the stream. And you can also, if you like, become a Patreon, and you get access to Discord, where we have chats and discussions and all sorts of fun. Jakar Law, or as Truss would say, T-Shock Arlaw. T-Sock Arlaw. So that's about Liz Truss saying, not saying T-Shock, but T-Sock. I know the Irish words are difficult to pronounce, but you know you're supposed to be a diplomat. You're supposed to be a government minister, and you're involved in, you know, you're not the health minister, you're not the technology minister, you're the foreign minister. So you should foreign secretary, I should say. So you should be able to say these things. Thanks very much, Peter, Mr. Peter. Hope you're well tonight. Imagine still believing in Brexit. they still do exist, some of them. Before we get on to Brexit and Boris Johnson and other issues like that, I just wanted to start off with this story here. Grant Shapps, or Michael Green, or whatever he calls himself, tells rail staff not to risk striking yourself out of a job. This is so ironic because it was a few months ago. Do you remember P&O ferries? Yes, it's a sort of distant memory now. But following the mass sacking of P&O ferry staff in Britain, not in France, even though P&O have staff in France, but in Britain there were 800 staff were laid off. And Grant Shapps and others said, we're going to do everything we can to get these workers reinstated. And now he's criticizing workers for striking. Any comments on Julian Assange? Yes, I'll be talking about that later on the stream. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. Really, really bad precedent being set there by Priti Patel, meaning that, once again, no one is protected under the law. The fact that she's willing to extradite him shows that the Tories just don't care anymore, and they'll extradite everyone and anyone. There's no stopping it now. But I'll talk a little bit later about that on the stream. There is an article I'd like to read on it. Thanks for that super chat, number 3. It says here, unions accuse Transport Secretary of threats and intimidation of workers, and government of trying to make political capital out of the strike. You know, there have been Tory MPs calling it a Labour-backed strike, Labour as in Labour Party back strike, in order to try and convince the public that this strike is unpopular and the Labour Party are unpopular because they support the striking workers. Now, I don't know if the entire party supports them. Some Labour MPs are not supportive of the strike, it seems. But it's, if the workers are, and this is workers, it's not just drivers, and you notice that the right-wing media will always focus on the drivers, and they'll pick, the medium salary of a driver, which is quite good, and say, oh, well, these people have no right to go on strike. Obviously, it's not just the drivers, it's the workers as well. People, cleaners, other staff, office staff as well. And they're struggling at the moment. They'd like a pay rise. They see, well, we're not getting one. Well, our solution is to strike. Andy, thanks so much for that super chat, Andy. It says here, in a speech in which Grant Shapps said he was appealing directly to workers instead of unions, he claimed that strikes were a bid to derail reforms that are critical to the network's future and designed to inflict damage at the worst possible time. This idea, you're not supposed to go on strike because it's the wrong time to go on strike. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. I think the RMT should chant "Shame on you" and see if Michael joins, like Affleck did. Yeah, join in like Affleck did. Michael Green. I think we could give it a go. Try it out and see how he reacts. Maybe he will join in. Although I think he's a bit more shrewd than Affleck is. I forgot what her first name is. Anyway, thanks for that super chat, Magic. Speaking at a Siemens, it goes on to say, Network Rail bosses have estimated next week's stoppages by RMT members on its signalling and maintaining staff across Great Britain, as well as onboard and station staff working for 13 train operators in England, will cost the industry about 150 million in lost revenue. Speaking at a Siemens train depot in North London, Shapps said he wanted to see staff get a pay rise, but added pay needs to be in step with the public sector. Look, if people can bargain and get a better pay rise, then why should it be in step with the public sector? That's why you have a union. A union is supposed to be there to try and get you as much the best conditions possible and the best pay available. It shouldn't be the minister that decides. He refused to say what a fair level of pay would be, but this week he highlighted 7% rise over a decade that police received, and their salaries and the salaries of nurses were 30% lower than average rail workers. Shapps said today the railway is a fight. Today the railways is a fight. It's not only competing against other forms of public and private transport, but we're in the battle with Zoom, Teams, and remote working. Look, during the pandemic, the railway companies lost money because people were staying at home. But if it was private, if it was nationalized, then you wouldn't have that concern, because you would pay the drivers. You wouldn't be reliant on the fees, on the cost of the ticket as much as a private company is. And a lot of these private companies are handing over the profits they make to the shareholders and not reinvesting it in services and higher wages for the workers. After the pandemic, he said strikes would lose even more passengers, more revenue, and potentially lose thousands of railway jobs. He added, "Don't risk striking yourself out of a job. Don't pit yourself against the public." Questions afterward, Shapps said that the words were not a threat, it's a statement of reality. Yes. Instead of actually, why is Grant Shapps on the side of whose side is he on? Is he on the side of workers? Well, I don't think so. Is he on the side of the companies? Maybe, but if these are private companies, why is the transport secretary on their side? He reiterated the idea that agency workers could be used should strikes be prolonged. Transferable skills, sometimes called agency working, will be something that will be become available as well in this particular dispute. This idea that what we're going to do is we're just going to, if people go on strike, they'll just be replaced by agency workers. Network Rail has said the cost of training agency workers would be prohibitive for most roles. Because you can't just, certain skills you need to build up over time. And you can't just call up an agency and say, I need a train driver, or I need a signal operator, or I need this person who works in this type of industry. It doesn't work like that. Nevertheless, several rail sources said that they could not have leeway to offer pay rises to staff and are bound by the Treasury. Rail contracts such as the coronavirus pandemic, since the coronavirus pandemic, are tightly controlled by the government, with firms paid a management fee and not collecting revenue. Michael Lynch, the RMT's General Secretary, said the threats made by Grant Shapps today to railway workers' livelihoods and their right to strike are disgraceful and will make RMT members even more fiercely determined to win this dispute. The leader of the TSSA union, Manuel Cortez, said, sadly and perhaps predictably, what we heard from the Transport Secretary looked very much like threats and intimidation of workers instead of constructive dialogue. The union, which has balloted Network Rail and some train operator managerial staff for action and could call strikes next month, said the Department for Transport was not allowing train operators to make pay offers and guarantees on job security, which calls into question what would be achieved through these negotiations. So it seems that the government is not allowing the train operators to pay more to give these workers a pay rise. Probably, and now this is probably what's happening is here, Grant Shapps doesn't want to see train operators get paid more money, because then other department workers would say, well, we want more money too. So they're attempting to draw a line in the sand here with train operators or train staff, rail staff. It said many rail workers, such as customer service staff, were low paid, with members working for LNRE receiving just above the full-time minimum wage of £18,278, while many station staff were on salaries of about £24,000. Union said the government were trying to make political game out of a strike rather than seeking a solution. Well, that's what the Tories do all the time. Conservatives are seeking to tie Labour to the pay revolt, while with campaign emails calling for asking for support to stop Labour strikes, and MPs posting on Twitter using the Stop Labour Strikes hashtag. It's all about, let's throw people under a train, in this case, not under a bus, for political gain. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse. And I think also there's a little bit of Margaret Thatcher seeping in here with Grant Shapps. I think he wants to appear tough. He wants to show that he's going to face down these unions like Margaret Thatcher did back in the 1980s. And to hell with the consequences. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Forgot to mention it was the RMT who was at P&O. Yes. The RMT were not, I'm not a huge fan of the RMT because they supported Brexit. They told their members to vote for Brexit, unfortunately, thinking it would protect them from things like this. Obviously, it did not. this is not directly related to Brexit, of course, but it makes it's difficult for the train operators to well, and it's not really. No, I wouldn't actually go down that road. Let's leave that. Hi Max. Now, Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max. Now's not the time. Where have I heard that before? Now is not the time for Scotland. Keep up with the excellent informative content, Max. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, today I'm maybe a little bit off today. I'm not sure what's going on with me. I just want to cover also this. It's not directly related to the trains, but it's still transport. And it says here that airlines to blame for travel chaos, says Labour's Emily Thornbury.
Morning about more travel headaches for anyone wanting to fly out of the country from Gatwick or Heathrow this morning. Gatwick Airport reducing the number of flights over its summer schedule. The boss of Heathrow saying it could take more than a year to 18 months to sort this all out. Horrendous for anyone wanting to get away. What can be done about it?
Well, I think the first thing is that we have to ask our airlines why they don't forward plan. It's not as though people turn up unannounced to get on a plane. They do book these seats many months in advance. Why is it that the airlines have not been making sure they have sufficient members of staff? And I personally think that what they've done is they've shed people, and now they're having problems getting them back because many people have... And the women, particularly it's largely women who check the tickets, are finding that they actually get more money if they work in a local supermarket than if they trek out to Heathrow and check tickets. And so they don't want to come back. So I think that the airlines have to think carefully about that. And when I've spoken to airline staff, and I have, they've said they can't believe that the airlines have been so short-sighted, have laid off so many staff, and now they realise they can't get them back again.
But you can...
I think maybe what happened was during the pandemic, the airlines and the airports themselves, because it's not just the airlines, but it's also the airports, they actually believe that, well, when we lay these people off, we'll be able to rehire them under new contracts. And what happened was, yes, some of them got, the fire and rehire contracts. But a lot of people decided, well, look, I can't wait around for the airport to reopen, or I can't wait around for the airlines to start hiring again. So I'll go and have a look for another job. Obviously, during if you don't have any money coming in, you'll have to go and have a look for another job. And the people have moved on. And then, of course, we have to talk about Brexit, of course, because, a lot of especially the staff working within the airports, maybe not so much the airlines, but certainly the ones working within the airports, cleaning staff and baggage handlers, a lot of them would have been workers from Europe. And, following Brexit, of course, they were sent home and told never to come back.
I understand the problem that they've had. The pandemic was a nightmare for them, having to shut down so many services, and very hard for them to predict exactly how many staff might be available when they want to restart things and give people the chance to have a holiday.
Yes, I get that. I get that argument, but I think that it's also been used by the likes of British Airways. It was a British Airways stewardess I was speaking to, and she was saying that she felt that British Airways had used the pandemic as an excuse to shed staff, and they'd shed far too many, and now in crisis. But I mean, that was what I'm just repeating a conversation that I had with somebody who wanted to talk to me about the chaos in the airports.
So you put this all on the industry. Do you think the government could do anything about this? What would you do?
Well, I think that if I was Transport Minister, I would be sitting down with the airlines and saying, what is the plan? How are you going to get through this? And what can we do to help you? Because we need to make sure that we have a transport industry that works properly, that our airports work as efficiently as possible. You can't have people waiting for hours for baggage, or indeed people waiting for hours to get through immigration, or their flights being cancelled whilst they're sitting in the airport. It's not good enough. So yes, I think that it's right for the minister to bring people in and challenge them and find out how they're going to ensure that this doesn't happen. People sacrifice in order to save enough money to be able to go on holiday with their family, and for that holiday to be cancelled at the last minute is simply not acceptable in this day and age.
And she's correct, but I still think that as minister, what she said here was, I'd sit down with the minister, I'd sit down with the airlines and ask them, what is your plan? And we'll try and help you whatever way we can. But of course, in some ways they can't get the staff they need because they used to have them brought in from abroad because they couldn't find them in the local area. So now that they can't find them in the local area, they're struggling and they're offloading a lot of the extra work onto the existing staff, which of course is going to cause burnout. Fearless Wolf, thank you so much for that super chat. The public have no idea how difficult a train is, how difficult driving a train is. It's up to their. Sorry, it's up there with the nurse's job terms of training. Only 2% of applications pass. It's not like driving a bus or a bus driver. Yes, it's a well-paid job because of the difficulty and the responsibility. There's a lot of training that needs to be done, security training, understanding a whole, how the train operates, what you can do in different situations. For example, if there's snow or rain or heavy rain or wind or something like that, how to organize the evacuation of the train, stuff like that. It's not just pressing. We have this idea that it's just push a lever to go forward, stop, and pull it back when you want to stop at the station. And there's a lot of things that go on around that job that we don't think about. And it requires a high level of skill. In some way, in underground stations, they're able to automate some of this. But if you're going from city to city, you need, at the moment at least, you still need qualified drivers. Thanks for that super chat. Yeah, so it's not a case of. Sorry, there's some spamming going on, I think. Okay. So I was expecting Emily Thornberry to say something about Brexit here, but she did not, which was interesting. Anyway, guys, let's move on to the next topic, of course. Boris Johnson running away. So first I want to show you, this clip first, and then this is hilarious.
Let's tell you more about Boris Johnson, who has pulled out of a major conference looking at issues around levelling up in northern England. This was to have taken place in Doncaster, where our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been waiting patiently for us. And you can bring us some breaking news. What's going on, Sam?
That's right. The applause that you could hear, not for Boris Johnson, because he is in Kyiv. He has gone to Ukraine for his second meeting with President Zelensky. He travelled this morning, Number 10 saying that the news blackout was for security reasons, both for him and for President Zelensky.
I don't believe that for 1 second. Does anyone actually believe that for 1 second? Like the fact for security reasons now. Look, for example, when Boris Johnson went the last time, there was a whole, hullabaloo about it. The press were invited along and they took lots of pictures and they filmed a lot of Boris Johnson walking around Kiev, interviewing people, talking to people on the street. There was but now, and of course that was months ago, that was back in April. The situation is much safer now in the capital in Ukraine, and Boris Johnson couldn't tell people beforehand because for security reasons. Really, it's nothing to do with the leaders of France, Germany, and Italy visiting yesterday. Nothing to do with that, or nothing to do with this conference in Doncaster or the by-election that's coming up.
This is the second trip that Boris Johnson has made to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. He last went on April the 10th. President Zelensky spoke to Boris Johnson on Wednesday night. Then they talked about the shared determination to defeat Russia in this war. They talked about the big problem of food shortages that the blockade on grain was causing. And he talked about the need to step up military training. Here we are several months into this war and the Russians continue to aggressively assault places in particularly in eastern Ukraine, and that war very far from over. Signs of stagnation in part of the Eastern Front, and it could go on for a very long time. Now, of course, you had European leaders, Mario Draghi and Olaf Scholz and President Macron, so France, Germany and Italy's premiers all going there yesterday. You'll have seen the pictures of those leaders on a train heading there. Today, an announcement by the European Union that that Ukraine is now on the path, as it were, to European Union membership.
So how come it was okay for the leaders of these three countries to go to Ukraine yesterday, but for Boris Johnson we couldn't hear about it until now for security reasons?
Although it'll take some years before it actually becomes a full member of the European Union. Boris Johnson never wanting to be outflanked by European Union leaders when it comes to Ukraine, therefore on his way to Kyiv this morning in order to meet with President Zelensky. I'm told that there are pictures on their way that will no doubt have been shot, I have to say, by staff of Boris Johnson. They're not letting journalists on these trips, so you get, as it were, handout photos very much presenting the picture that Boris Johnson wants, but
So don't bring journalists along, because journalists might show things that are embarrassing, or journalists might ask questions about, your campaign and stuff like that, or the campaign that you were supposed to be attending and the conference that you were supposed to be attending. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Was that a stealthy fridge use? Yeah. He flies by fridge, stealth fridge.
They are coming very soon as Boris Johnson continues his attempt to reset. That reset didn't involve a potentially more tricky appearance today at the Northern Research Group's conference up here in Doncaster. They were expecting to hear from Boris Johnson about why he remains the man to win the Red Wall, why he is the man who can be trusted barely 2 weeks after that vote of no confidence where 148 Tory MPs said that they didn't trust him to take the party into the next election, and a number of quite tough policy demands from the head of the NRG, Jake Berry, but no answers on any of those. Instead, we're going to get some pictures delivered to us by Downing Street of Boris Johnson in Ukraine, coming shortly after he made his second trip to the embattled, war-torn country since the conflict began.
So there we have it. Boris Johnson did not attend a meeting with Tories. Okay, these were not, Labour voters or Lib Dems, or he wasn't, God forbid, he was in Scotland. No, this was him going to the North Research Group convention or whatever it was, and they were going to ask him maybe some slightly difficult questions about what are you doing for the North, what's happening with levelling up, how are you going to win the next election, things like this. And Johnson was too chicken. He just ran away. And he ran away to Ukraine, but of course did not bring journalists along so that they couldn't actually ask him any questions, and just gave the journalists, here's a few photos of Boris Johnson shaking hands with the important people in Ukraine, and him looking prime ministerial or whatever, and that's it. And let's move on from all that nastiness about, my ethics advisor resigning and me getting, a bit of a thrashing at a no confidence vote. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat. Boris is like that one relative that turns up uninvited at Christmas, unless if there's cake, of course, yes. Can you imagine poor, Zelensky, who's like, okay, I'm trying to deal with these. The doorbell rings and he's like, who's that at this hour? It's like, go down and check who it is. If it's Amazon, to tell them just to leave the box at the door. It's like, no, it's Johnson. Who? Boris Johnson. Remember the guy from... Oh, okay. Him again. What's he back for? What does he want this time? Yeah, he's having some trouble in Doncaster. Donbass? No, Doncaster. Oh, okay. What's... Is he... Is he fighting a war there? To a certain extent, yes. Oh, my goodness. So, it says here... from The Guardian, Prime Minister makes big error by pulling out of Tories' Northern Conference. Boris Johnson has pulled out of a major event held by his Northern MPs designed to energise supporters and improve the party's chances of holding on to the Red Wall seats in the next election. To pull out of something like this is the Red Wall is what delivered Boris Johnson his 80-seat majority, or maybe not all of it, but a certain section of that, certainly. And he can't be bothered to go there and meet with the people. After telling the Northern Research Group he would address its gathering with hundreds of activists held in Doncaster on Thursday, Number 10 said the Prime Minister would not be able to attend. The caucus is run by Rosendale and Darwin MP Jake Berry, and acts as a pressure group to fight for more attention to be paid to the swathes of seats the Conservatives won for the first time in 2019 across Northern England. No reason was given by Downing Street for Johnson's non-attendance. Some Tories had expected him to visit Wakefield, 20 miles away, before joining the conference. Johnson, whose birthday is on Sunday, has yet to visit the seat, which will hold a by-election next Thursday after being vacated by Imran Hamad Khan following the conviction for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. One Tory MP said it was a big error for Johnson to pull out. So these people seem to forget that Johnson wanted to become Prime Minister. He's done that. And I think it's almost at this stage he's like, okay, can I be Prime Minister again? Probably not. So what's the point in going and helping these people out? See, Johnson has this sense of entitlement that they owe him something, not he owes them something. So he would say, he's probably thinking, look, these people won their seats because of me and because of my slogan, Get Brexit Done. So what's the point in me going there to get browbeaten by them, asking, well, what are you going to do for the next election? What are you going to do to help us? And he frankly doesn't give a crap about these people, about these MPs. He's had his 80-seat majority, but I think Johnson is starting to see that the steam, his entire premiership is running out of steam. The wheels are coming off. Unless something really dramatic happens, Johnson is finished. But it's a slow car crash. He's not going anytime soon. And it's a sort of war of attrition against the Conservative Party, which really begs the question why they don't get rid of him. Because he's not winning them elections. And replacing him could actually stop some of the rot. It's actually, I think now Boris Johnson has peaked. He's no longer a benefit to the party. He's a liability. And anyone else in his place would actually maybe help the party hold on to some seats. You could kick Johnson out, replace him, and I'll be talking a little bit later about somebody who could replace him. Replace him with somebody fresh, somebody a bit more professional, somebody who could present a different side of the party. And then you could hold on to some of these seats. You could restart the party in a sense. There's a lot of rot and corruption within it, and I frankly think a lot of voters are tired with the Conservatives. It's not just Johnson, but they're tired with the whole party, and they'd like, their enthusiasm for Johnson and Brexit and all has gone, and they'll either vote for Lib Dems or vote Labour or just not turn up, and that's a disaster for the Conservatives. So you could replace Johnson with somebody. It would help a bit, but it's not going to. I don't think it's going to help them win any massive majority. It may help them hold on to a few seats. It might be enough seats to maintain a presence, to hold on to the position of government. But I don't know. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Just shows what Boris thinks of the next blue wall. Thinks of the new blue wall. Yes, and when it comes to the blue wall, this is something that's looking likely to fall to the Lib Dems, which I was talking a little bit about this today with somebody, and I get this impression that the Conservatives are officially more concerned about Labour, but privately I think they're more concerned about the Liberal Democrats, because the Liberal Democrats are eating into seats that are traditionally Tory because of Johnson and because of this corruption. While the wins that the Conservatives got from Labour in the past usually were Labour seats, and they're probably expecting them to flip back to Labour. Winning a lot of these seats back in 2019 was a fluke because of Brexit and because of Johnson. And now Brexit is no longer as popular as it was, and Johnson is tanking. He won't even turn up, at by-elections to promote his party's candidate. That's a bad sign. And if you look at politicians also around the world, when George W. Bush was into his second term, Republican candidates didn't want to be seen dead with him. They wouldn't be seen dead with him. They in the same way, even Obama towards the end, the shine had come off him, and he appeared old-fashioned in a sense. He was no longer he represented the past, and while some Democrats were happy to appear with Obama, a lot of them were distancing themselves from him, and that's what's happening also with Johnson. Johnson is no longer the flavour of the month. It was very different back in 2019. Everyone wanted to be, pictured with Boris Johnson, and him smashing, a JCB through a wall, and to be appearing there beside him with your thumbs up, getting Brexit done. They don't want that anymore. They don't want to be part of that anymore. And they are concerned about the blue wall, because the by-elections are worse for the Tories than the general election, because in the general, people will generally vote the way they normally do. But in a by-election, there's a chance that you're going to give the government a bloody nose. And the government, of course, is the Tories at the moment. Boris is a clown, yes. I've been in Edinburgh since 2008, no plans to leave. Johnson and the Tories are excellent for Irish reunification and Scots independence. Yes. And when it comes to Scottish independence, it just seems to get worse and worse. Boris Johnson trying to suggest that Brexit was a good idea also for Scotland, even though Scotland, of course, voted a majority to remain. Trying to sell Brexit to the Scots doesn't work. Even the Tories in Scotland know that. Have the candidates told Boris to stay away from their elections? Mike, it's possible that some of them had said stay away. It's more likely than not, and Johnson decided, okay, I'll go away. But at least for the Doncaster, he should have turned up for that. So if he didn't turn up to support a candidate for a by-election, that's understandable. But he was supposed to meet with these activists, Tory activists and supporters. So this would have been a generally friendly crowd. He wouldn't be going into the lion's den here. And he didn't turn up for that. He couldn't be bothered. because once again, I think they would ask him difficult questions, and it would be embarrassing. And he has no love for these people. They served their purpose. They got him his 80-seat majority. He got into number 10. He held on to his position as Prime Minister. That's all he wanted. And as I said, I think he's starting to realise that the party's over. And he's sort of running on fumes at the moment. It goes on to say here, there is growing frustration among dozens of Tory MPs gathered at the conference in Doncaster at Boris Johnson pulling out at the last minute. Organisers were being told that number 10 up until midday still to expect the Prime Minister to address activists, but it was revealed this afternoon that he's actually in Ukraine. A government source said a meeting between Johnson and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had been scheduled to take place today for a week. somebody was very bad at Boris Johnson's planning. Yes, it's not an excuse. He could have done this at any time, said one MP, who added, even his most loyal supporters here are pretty pissed off. I love this. Another said, it's no loss for us, but the Prime Minister ought to be making every effort to support and respect the people who hold his future in their hands. They added, it was very good for Tom Tugendhat, who had been given a much bigger platform as a result of Johnson's no-show, and hinted he might run to be the next Conservative leader. Another source at the Northern Research Group, a conference, called it dreadful, really poor optics, that made it look like Johnson was running away from his MPs just a week after 41% of them declared that they had no confidence in him. Yes, apart from the constituency for the by-election, that's okay, sort of understandable, but not going to meet with these people from this research group, Northern Research Group. The Northern Research Group is a bit like the ERG, okay, not as extreme, not as crazy, but they're a lobby group for the northern areas that were won by the Tories, and they of course want to hold on to their seats. They don't want to be kicked out at the next election, and they're afraid that Johnson is doing everything he's doing at the moment is going to cause them to lose their seats. And they want to show their voters that, look, we lobbied Boris Johnson for this and we got this. So vote for me next time because I delivered this. Don't vote for Labour because they can't deliver that. But if you're not able to get stuff, and Boris Johnson is not providing you with any promises, it's interesting that, and I don't know if this has changed, but couldn't he have phoned it in? Couldn't he have used Zoom or something? Couldn't he have spoke to the audience, the guests, and say, look, there was a meeting that came up with Zelensky that it was planned from before, or it was a last minute thing, or I don't know. Come up with something, but no, can't even be bothered to do that. Just on where is it? Yes, I just want to talk a little bit about this one on Tugendhat. So, Tom Tugendhat hints at future bid to be Conservative leader. And if he does, I better brush up on my Tugendhat. I presume that's how you pronounce it. Tugendhat. Okay. Tom Tugendhat has hinted that he will run to replace Boris Johnson in the next Conservative leadership election, as he warned that the party was too focused on divisive politics. The Tory backbencher said that his party was not like a church with one true faith, one pope, but that the MPs should find themselves forward for service, like when another contest for the top job is held. After 41% of Conservative MPs declared that they had no confidence in Johnson's leadership, and with the prospect of 2 by-election losses looming next week, Tugendhat admitted the government was facing difficulties during its midterm period. Asked by The Guardian if he would rule out standing for leader, Tugendhat said, "No, I wouldn't rule it out, and I won't rule it out because I think that we should be ambitious for ourselves, for our communities, and for our country. We should offer ourselves forward, and then then it's up to colleagues and the country to choose. We shouldn't be resentful about the choice if the choice doesn't go our way, but we should offer ourselves for service. This is literally the point of being in public service, is to offer yourself." Addressing MPs in the Northern Research Group conference in Doncaster, which Johnson pulled out at the last minute due to a visit to Ukraine, Tugendhat admitted there were perfectly legitimate questions about the party's waning poll ratings. He said that the past few years had been more trying than I think it should have been, and that the government had been too willing to listen to those divisive voices. Just call him T-Hat. Tory hat. Why would you need a virtuous hat? Tugendhat, who represents the Blue Wall seat of Tonbridge and Malling in Kent, said backbenchers could still have a powerful voice within the party. He added, "You can actually change policy as a backbencher in your party. You can drive the change that not only does your community need, but actually the whole country needs." Tugendhat, a former soldier who now chairs the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, which has been deeply critical of the UK's withdrawal from Afghanistan last summer, has been touted by some as a potential leader contender. Johnson has vowed to fight on and is now immune from another no confidence vote for 12 months. However, his opponents believe that they may be able to get a group of MPs to set the rules known as the 1922 Committee to have the period of safety in an attempt to force him out. They are hoping that the Privileges Committee investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over Partygate will cause more MPs to call for him to go. Something about all of this is that it seems to go in waves. So Johnson he's about to resign, he's gone, he's finished, and then it sort of dies down, and then it comes back again with another scandal, then it dies down, and then it comes back with another scandal. And in this way, Boris Johnson is pretty immune. If we look back over the last 6 months, he should have resigned at least a dozen times, but he didn't. And he still got away with it. And I'm going to say the same thing again. When these by-election results come in, if they come in badly for the Tories, it'll be another case of Boris Johnson. Okay, he's on ice, he's on thin ice, he's about to go, and then it will die down for a bit, and then we'll move on, and Johnson will be safe for a bit. Tom Tugendhat. Toucan in a hat. Tom Toucan in a hat. Thanks for that magic guess. I need to brush up on that. I think it's Tugendhat. Tugend. Because there's a D there, unless the D is silent. Triple T. Tory tosser twat in a hat. He's better than Johnson, so that's already setting the bar. Better than Johnson is setting the bar really, really low. I think he voted Remain. I don't remember exactly, and I don't think he sees himself as a Brexiteer. But I need to check, because I could be confusing him with another Tory. He's not very well known, and I don't know if that's going to harm him. But the idea of him being an ex-soldier definitely helps his credentials, improve his credentials, and it's there may be an appetite for change in the Conservative Party to go back to something that represented the past. I don't know if this is the type of candidate. See, it's also important to differentiate between a good leader and a good prime minister and a good campaigner. Johnson is a great campaigner, or was a great campaigner. Prime Minister, no. A disaster. Leader, to a certain extent, yes, you could say he was a good leader because he was able to remain in place. He didn't get removed. So Tugendhat could become a good leader, but I don't think the public would have there isn't an appetite for somebody like that. Unless you're just talking about the traditional Tory voting bloc. Yes, they would support him no matter who's in charge. Jacob Rees-Mogg would be in charge. Boris Johnson again would be in charge. They would still vote for that. But I do think there is a bit of a change taking place within the Conservative Party, especially as we heard Tobias Ellwood talking about rejoining the single market. That for me was a very interesting change within the Tories. Criminals in high office, the system is crap. Well said, number 3. Yes. None of these people have been removed. Johnson has broken the law and he hasn't been removed. How is that possible? How is it that his MPs didn't force him to resign? When we're talking about asking Boris Johnson to apologise for something, about a dozen MPs asked him to apologise. For him breaking the law, for lying to Parliament, we're talking about a third of his MPs voted against him. So, we're not talking about a massive sway within the party saying, yes, this is enough. No, they still are loyal to the leader, no matter who the leader is. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I just want to share with you this funny video, and then we'll get back to the serious stuff in just a jiffy. Hope you enjoy.
But Theresa May, for example, told the Prime Minister that if he signed this Northern Ireland protocol, we would end up in just this crisis. So you can't invoke the principle of necessity. You've plainly broken the law.
Well, I'm afraid that's just not right, Robert. And I'm sorry, but this is just your Romani fairy tale make-believe going on here.
And I'm definitely not a Romaniac.
I think he doth protest too much. Oh, hello, Ramona. I hate Brexit. Look, the reality is that the Northern Irish economy is lagging behind the rest of the UK. Don't look that up, Robert, because I don't deal in facts. That's just not what this government is about. These are serious problems. We wanted to comply with our international obligations, of course, but now we need not to comply. It's a bit like, Robert, if I went into the shops to buy a Magnum, but I didn't have enough money for that Magnum, well, then I need to steal the Magnum. And this is a doctrine which is reflected in our International Law Commission's Articles of State Responsibility and has been invoked by several states in similar situations to ours.
Yes. Well done, Rosie. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Come on now, you lefty Romaniac Ramon Max. Our Boris is the win, is the beast. Don't you know there's a war on? Yeah, boot commie Corbyn. Yeah, but etc. I struggled to read that, but I got the gist of it. Thanks, Gareth. Yes, there's a war on, so we need to stop criticizing Boris Johnson. He's doing his best. He's doing his best. And if you don't agree with that, then you're a bootlicking commie, Corbynista or whatever. Well said. So, just moving on, I want to show you that this is, oh my goodness, this has to be shown. I'm sorry. Alistair, before I get to that, Alistair with the super chat. Now I think a more snap general election after the election results, scorched earth for Boris Johnson, is there if they're bad. I don't know. It would make political sense for Boris Johnson. See, it mightn't even be Boris Johnson. It would be, see, who's really in the driving seat? Is it Johnson or is it the party? Because Johnson probably wouldn't want another election because there's a risk that he'd lose. He could even lose his own seat. Johnson wouldn't want that. There's a risk that he would lose his majority. He wouldn't want that. So I don't think Johnson is going to go for election. I could be wrong. He may prove me wrong and say, yeah, we're going for a general election after the by-election results. But that would be, I think it'd be really damaging. You would have the Daily Mail and the Sun and all doing everything they can to smear Keir Starmer. They say he eats babies and stuff for breakfast. He's really, he's really Jeremy Corbyn's son or something like that. or long lost cousin or something like that. They'll do whatever they can, but I don't think it's going to work. And Johnson could face a defeat. Then he would be out because he would be no longer. There'd be no point in holding on to him. Maybe there's still a certain amount of loyalty to him in the party, and there's a certain amount of hope that he can hold on to power. And that's probably why there are people in the Conservative Party who don't want him calling an election, because they see that even though they're loyal to him and whatever, they would prefer just keep going. Don't rock the boat. Yes, we might win it, but there's also a risk that we won't. But I think the more pragmatist within the party were saying, look, if we call an election now, we're toast. It's better to replace Johnson. So it could be a case of Johnson replaced and then an election called. Because if they call an election with Johnson, I think it's going to be a pretty bad result for them. But then, don't underestimate the Labour Party's ability to shoot itself in the foot. Thanks for that super chat, Alistair. I want to show you this. Oh my goodness. So, people in Ukraine are big fans of Boris Johnson. They feel like he's a true ally. So this is John Stevens of the Daily Mail. Explains why Number 10 would rather capitalise on support for the Prime Minister in Ukraine than going to the Tory events in Doncaster.
But I suppose he argues he has to take the trip to Ukraine when there is a chance.
Yeah, I mean, these things are always, the timing isn't quite down to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's only certain times you can go. Boris Johnson's diary is obviously pretty busy. We know that he's going to Rwanda this coming week for the meeting of Commonwealth heads of government. And then after that, he's going straight to a G7 meeting in Germany and then a NATO meeting in Spain. So he's obviously got a lot coming on in the next couple of weeks. However, obviously repairing relationships with Tory MPs is also very important to him. There's obviously a lot of people who voted against him in that confidence vote a week or so ago. And so I think there were a lot of people out there in the Tory backbenches who were quite looking forward to Boris Johnson and thinking, well, hang on a minute, he's showing some effort. He's going to try and put right some of those problems. Quite interesting, isn't it? So he's Ukraine, then he's got the Commonwealth Conference, Germany, NATO. It's all about that helps burnish his credentials as an international statesman, and it's very difficult then for the Labour Party, the Labour leader Keir Starmer, who is still, in my view, struggling to make an impact, to get involved in that sort of debate, that sort of narrative, because that's when Number 10 control it all.
But I don't think the public care about that. The public don't care about Ukraine. They don't care about Boris Johnson appearing as a statesman. They care about the cost of living crisis. They care about their rising bills. They care about what's been done. They don't care about what Boris Johnson is doing in France or in Germany or in Ukraine or in the United States or wherever he's off to next. They don't care about that. And this idea that, this is going to boost Boris Johnson in some way, I don't think so.
Yeah, and the Tories think that Boris Johnson on the world stage, looking statesman-like, is something that does well with voters. Obviously, on Ukraine, it feels like he's done very well, that he gave early backing to Zelensky. Britain was sending over military weapons earlier than other places. Zelensky has obviously repeatedly praised Boris Johnson. You speak to people who've got friends and relatives in Ukraine, and they talk about how people in Ukraine are big fans of Boris Johnson. They feel he's been a true ally through all of this. And Downing Street obviously wants to capitalise on that.
But the people in Ukraine do not vote in by-elections. Okay? Doesn't matter what people in Ukraine think. They could think Boris Johnson is a god, but it doesn't make any difference to people in Doncaster. It doesn't make any difference to people in wherever the next by-elections are, or in the general election. This thing that, people in Ukraine love him, probably. Britain is supporting Ukraine militarily to a significant amount, much better than many countries, and kudos to the UK for doing that. But this doesn't help Boris Johnson at home, or if it did, that time is over, because as you know, the war in Ukraine is front page news in Ukraine. For good or bad, it's no longer front page news in Britain. And I don't think the average voter on the street. Yeah, Boris Johnson's in Ukraine again for a photo with Zelensky. Ah, okay. Well, how does that how does that help me pay my bills? How does that help me find a better job? It doesn't. Boris went to Ukraine, got the photo with their leader to make him look good, and then job done. Let's go home. Yeah. And, Zelensky will get something out of this. It's not just, wasting Zelensky's time. And he's able to, Johnson goes there. Yeah, well, we'll send you lots more of equipment. Good, great. Can we get a photo over that? Yeah, sure, no problem. Here's a photo. Do you want a hug as well? Fingers crossed his return flight from Rwanda is cancelled. It'd be funny if Johnson got deported by accident to Rwanda. He's like in Rwanda, and the Foreign Office can't find him, and he's been sent off to a camp, and they're like, "Who are you? I'm Boris Johnson. You have to let me out. I demand a phone call." No, you don't get any phone calls here. The British said that we have to send, the people have to be shown how really bad it is as a deterrent, so they don't return. No, but I'm the Prime Minister. Yeah, that's what they all say. I've never seen you before. I don't know who the Prime Minister of Britain is. That'd be wonderful. The Home Office going from camp to camp trying to find Johnson. Anyway, let's move on. Oh my goodness. So, just want to talk a little bit about Keir Starmer for a moment. It says here, Starmer enters fresh row with Labour's left as he prepares to ditch pledge to scrap tuition fees. Tuition fees. Keir Starmer has entered a fresh row with Labour's left, claiming he is ready to ditch the party's pledge to scrap university tuition fees. At the 2019 general election under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, Labour promised to end the failed free market experiment of higher education and abolish tuition fees. Universities and colleges in England can currently charge up to £9,250 a year in tuition fees, which are payable via a student loan. I really don't. Okay, well, it has been estimated that Labour's policy of scrapping fees as well as bringing back maintenance grants would cost around £6 billion per year. Since replacing Mr Corbyn as Labour leader, Sir Keir has stuck to a pledge to abolish tuition fees and even made a promise part of his leadership election campaign. But it is now emerged that he could drop the signature policy. Could drop. Now, I'm not sure if he is actually going to drop it, but it says, according to the Financial Times, Labour are likely to scrap the pledge as part of a desire to sound more fiscally responsible, although the newspaper said the details were not yet finalised. The Labour leader was accused by Momentum, the group that grew out of Mr Corbyn's two leadership election campaigns, of adding to a series of broken promises. A spokesperson told Mail Online scrapping tuition fees was the flagship policy of Labour's 2017 general election campaign, which saw the biggest increase in the party's vote share since 1945, gaining dozens of seats. Look, there's a cost. Now, I don't know. So when a politician presents a policy, there's the economic cost and there's the political cost. And really, I don't understand what the political cost here is. We've looked at, 10 years of austerity, 10 years of mismanagement of funds, £37 billion handed over to Dido Harding that just went up in smoke. Literally, in some cases, now they're burning PPE. And the Labour Party are afraid, or some people within the Labour Party are afraid, that if we scrapped tuition fees, which would cost £6 billion a year, this would be bad politically. This would make us look dodgy when it comes to finances. I don't believe that. And, you know, if you say we're going to end tuition fees forever, or for as long as we're in power, that I think that would turn out a lot of voters, especially young people. And I don't understand why they don't go with that. If Starmer's not doing something fundamental for UK politics like PR voting or a new constitution, he might end up being a disappointment. I've always been saying, when there's the election, you have to vote against the Tories. So anyone is better than the Tories, apart from maybe UKIP. But you know, the main parties, Labour, Lib Dems, you have to vote out the Tories. And whatever you get in return is going to be guaranteed better. Now, does it mean it's going to be fantastic? No. But in order to deal with the problem of the cost of living crisis, the Tories are not interested in dealing with that. You need somebody else in there who will hopefully do something. Because with the Tories, it's a hopeless situation. With another party, it's a hopeful situation. Will they turn out to be wonderful? I don't know. I don't think so. But it's better than what you already have. And that's why you need to get rid of the Tories. But these policies, I think this is a problem, because you need to give people something to come out and vote for. And saying we're going to end tuition fees. Yeah, of course the Tories are going to attack that and say, oh, it's going to be throwing money away and stuff like that. But you need to give somebody something in order for them to come out. So young people who are obviously struggling as well during a cost of living crisis, they want to go to university. They're saying, look, I can't afford it. If it's now affordable, because Labour have made it affordable, then they're going to vote for the Labour Party. But you need to put this policy front and centre. You need to go around meeting with young people as well, in high school, in secondary school, because they're the ones who will eventually have to take out these loans. They'll be the ones who will be coming of age to vote. You vote the party, not the leader. My Unison union is now promoting proportional representation, Max. That's great, Artemis. It's important to remember that Starmer has met Rupert Murdoch. Yes. It's really, I don't understand the political benefit of this. The cost, look, once again, the cost £6 billion. That's money you're either giving it to the students to spend, or you're saving the students this money. And if the students have money set aside, then they're going to spend it in the local economy. You know, once again, it's all about spending money in the local economy. It drives the economy and it drives jobs. But proportional, yes, in the chat there, proportional representation is fundamental. The Labour Party need to bring it in, or they're toast. And my fear is that they will get in with first past the post, and then they say, okay, this is good. We're going to change this. They need to do something radical, but they need to get into power first. That's the thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about them not promoting PR at the moment. I'm more concerned with them enacting it when they're in power, because they can say whatever they want, and then when they get in power, it's a different story completely. As we saw, you know, it's the case with most politicians. They'll say X and then they'll get in and do Y. But when it comes to proportional representation, I'd be happy with, you know, and I think we should be happy with the Labour Party if they're actually going to go ahead with it. And there is a huge amount of support within the Labour Party for PR. But without power, you can't put it in place. You know, you need to push it through Parliament, and that's, you know, it's not happening at the moment. and it can't happen at the moment with the Tories with the massive majority. Remove that majority, have a coalition government that are supportive of PR, get it through, and then the Tories are toast. No more extreme Tory party in the future winning power. Anyway, let's move. Just wanted to touch on that. Of course, the cost of living crisis, something that the Labour Party need to focus on. You know, it used to be the NHS. Unfortunately, the NHS is being sold off bit by bit, and the public are being groomed to believe that this is a good idea. I still believe the Labour Party need to fight to defend the NHS, but they also need to focus on the cost of living crisis too. It says here, Tesco shoppers buy fewer items amid unprecedented cost of living squeeze. Tesco said customers were putting fewer items in their baskets and are switching to cheaper own brand alternatives as they face unprecedented increases in the cost of living. The UK's largest supermarket said it had gained market share from the other big four chains, Asda, Morrisons and Sainsbury's, but sales in these 3 months to the 28th of May fell 1.5% on the same period last year when the UK was in lockdown. Wow, so it's actually lower than when it was in lockdown. Oh, I have a blackout here. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to stay online. I've had a blackout, guys. I'm not sure what's happening here in Italy. The lights are all gone out. My computer's running on backup, so it could last a few minutes. It could go at any moment. Not sure what's happening. But bear with me. Anyway. Tesco said the biggest fall was in clothing and general merchandise such as homewares and toys, while the decline in the volume of goods sold was partly offset by inflation. Amid soaring petrol prices, fuel sales remain down on pre-pandemic levels. Murphy said Tesco continued a price fuel very competitively in the middle of the market. Sorry, this is very distracting. These technical issues are beyond EMP attack. I hope not. You know, something major could be happening, and Italy rules. I don't know if it's an Italian problem, but I'm not sure what's happening. Stop paying your bills in Rufus Max. Sounds like a UPS. Yes, my UPS is beeping, but I'm not sure what's happening. I'm in the dark here, so. Paul Mason is shutting Max down. They're invading Max. Sir Ron Venti strikes again. Yes. I think the problem is being resolved. I hope Mrs. Max is resolving the problem. Maybe Max is just backing up. My ISP still has power, yes, because I'm not. Okay, and I'm back. So No, not not fire alarm. No, I'm not sure what happened here. There was a blackout. Mrs. Max, I think, has gone and tripped the switch, so things are back to normal, and the beeping has stopped. So, thank goodness for a UPS. Anyway, it goes on to say, sorry about that distraction. This is why it's done live. It's not recorded. Murphy defended his £4.75 million pay package, saying the majority of that is variable and based on performance, and that Tesco has made an enormous investment in pay rise of about 6% for floor staff in the past year. But 4.75 million pound pay package. That's a lot. And it's, it's... Get Boris out. Mrs. Max to the rescue. It says sales in the Republic of Ireland were down 2.4%, but overall sales were up 2% because of the strong growth in Central Europe and its Booker wholesale chain. The retailers' comments come after more than 1 in 5, 22% of those who took part in a recent survey said they skipped a meal or reduced the size of their meals because they cannot afford to buy food. Shop prices rose in May to the fastest rate in more than a decade, according to figures from the British Retail Consortium and Nelson IQ. Food inflation leapt from 4.3% in May, from 3.5% in April, the highest since April 2012. On Thursday, the Bank of England warned that the headline rate of annual consumer inflation was likely to rise above 11% in October. Inflation is currently running at a 40-year high of 9%. What's happening is, of course, in supermarkets, prices are rising. People are switching to the cheaper brands, but this is in order to buy the food. The problem, of course, is inflation is hitting also the cheaper brands. So it means that even if people switch to cheaper brands, those brands are going to go up in price as well, because they're not immune to these shocks. Thanks so much for coming on, Alistair. Right chat. You all have a good night. Day, Max. Keep up the excellent informative content. Thank you so much, Alistair, and thanks for that support during the stream. Just sticking with the cost of living, it says here about the Bank of England. Bank of England to take a forceful action on inflation, says chief economist. See, the problem here in this is when the Bank of England raise interest rates, it's in order to cool down the economy, because the economy is overheating, because it's growing. There's too much money in the economy, but that's not the case now. Is that inflation running at almost 9% is not because the economy is doing so well. It's because of external forces. The Bank of England's only response is to raise interest rates. It has no other powers. It's a bit like when you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail, and it doesn't have any real. It can provide advice to the Chancellor, but apart from that, all it can do is raise interest rates or lower interest rates. But lowering interest rates isn't really a possibility at the moment, because they're at a record low. So raising them is what it's going to do. Is it's going to take money out of the economy at a time when people actually need money. The Bank of England will raise interest rates more aggressively to tackle soaring living costs if there's a sign of inflation becoming persistently higher for longer than expected, its chief economist has warned. Hugh Phil said Threadneedle Street was on high alert to take forceful action if there were signs of wage price spiral taking hold, or if companies continue to raise their prices. Now, I'm very concerned about this, because wage price spiral, what's happening at the moment? Workers are seeing their wages in real terms decrease. Even if they're getting a bit of a pay rise, in real terms they're decreasing, because inflation is eating into that. So what are they asking for? They're asking for higher wages. And the response from the Bank of England is, well, this is going to drive up inflation, so the government need to be strict. They should restrict wage inflation or wage increases. And that's a big problem, because it means that people are getting poorer, so they need money. They need more money in order just to keep their head above water. The central bank raised interest rates by 0.25% percentage points on Thursday to 1.25%, while warning that inflation was expected to peak above 11% later this year. So it was 10, now it's 11, it seems. this year as surging household energy bills and the rising cost of weekly shop hit families across the UK. In comment signal that the bank was willing to go further with a 0.5% rise in future, Phil told Bloomberg TV. If we see greater evidence that the current high level of inflation is becoming embedded in pricing behaviour by firms, in wage setting behaviour by firms and workers, then that will be the trigger for more aggressive action. Phil insisted that the central bank had not acted too late to curb the highest rate of inflation for 4 decades, despite raising its forecast for consumer price inflation for the 5th successive time on Thursday. Look, I don't believe for a second that the bank didn't know what was coming. We've been hearing about this for months, and just at this moment, the central bank, the Bank of England says, okay, we're going to do something about it. Yeah, I think they're under political pressure as well. Boris Johnson's government is, don't raise interest rates yet. Let's see how things go. And then, if necessary, raise interest rates. But it's not going to. This is not going to actually help inflation, deal with inflation. It could actually make it worse, because what it'll mean is people will end up paying more, because they have less money. Because what'll happen is, if you have less money, you're going to cut back on things. If you're cutting back on things, what's that going to do? It's going to force more and more people people are going to lose their jobs, because your bars and restaurants that would have been surviving at this stage, they're going to close because they don't have any footfall. People are cutting back. People are not. One of the first things, if you go to a restaurant once a month or once a week even, you're going to. That's one of the first things you're going to cut back. If you're middle class, if you're struggling to pay the bills, you're not going to go anywhere near these places that maybe you had an intention of doing that, but you're not going to go to these places. So certain businesses are going to have to lay off staff. Those staff are laid off. They're not going to be able to get these people back. These businesses are eventually going to close. The staff are laid off. They're on universal credit, or they're finding other work. It'll mean that there's less money being generated, so the government are going to have to raise taxes or borrow, and this is going to have an impact on everyone. Or cut services, which the Tories normally do. The CBI, with the Labour Party and then with the nod from the Conservative Unionist Party, they imported workers from Poland, Romania, who thought £10 an hour was great money. But we knew different. Here's the British Exchequer doing regarding taxes coming in. How's it doing? These companies hit by Brexit must be contributing a lot less. Yes, businesses, there must be a massive shortfall, because if the businesses are not able to operate like they were before, and they're laying off staff, then they're going to produce less for the Exchequer. They want everyone to be in as much debt as possible. It guarantees a future money. They already have all the now money. Max has gone completely off the grid. From Polizia, in darkness he hid, the Italian powers metric. Mrs. Max is electric. She bypassed the meter. Save a quid. I'll have to get on to her and find out what happened there. USA is sending 40 billion to Ukraine, and people in the US don't have healthcare or homes, are getting pissed off. I imagine that is the case, Cormac. It's not the fault of the people of Ukraine, but it creates a situation where people are looking, okay, why are we helping them out when we can't even fix our own roads, or we can't afford, as the certain politicians will say, we can't afford universal health care. That's too expensive. But we can send money abroad. it's more complicated than that, but that's what people look at and that's what people will vote on. And I think the Republicans are going to benefit from that. In November, there are the midterm elections, and I think the Republicans are going to benefit from what's happening with Ukraine, ironically. I can't believe the Bank of England is still considering old world interest dabbling for inflation management. It's a global supply and demand thing. Plus, the Tories have no appetite to drop VAT or sensibly cap. Yeah, this is not in the hands of the Bank of England. They have no control over this, as you said, as you rightly said, Mark. Yes, this is outside the scope of the government even. But they won't tackle VAT. They won't reduce VAT. They won't tackle the costs for companies. And you know, I'm struggling to understand why they won't go any further. Because there's some massive hole there that they're afraid that if they borrow more or if they raise taxes, it's going to come back and bite them on the arse. I don't know. Anyway, guys, I want to move on to one of the final stories. Government's Rwanda policy is absolutely shameful, says Lady Amos. Sending asylum seekers to Rwanda is an absolutely shameful policy that threatens to undermine Britain's potential to lead in a changing world, the Labour peer Valerie Amos has said. Lady Amos, who this week became the first black member of the Order of the Garter, said the scheme sending a message to other countries about how seriously we take our responsibilities to the United Nations Security Council and Charter on Refugees. She said that Prince Charles, also a member of the Order as Prince of Wales, absolutely understands his role in terms of the importance of neutrality. After he was reported to have made disapproving comments in private on the Rwanda scheme. Amos, a former leader of the Lords and UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, became the first black leader of the Oxford College when she was appointed Master of University College in 2020. She added another of the many firsts within her investiture this week in the Order of the Garter, which has a maximum of 24 members in addition to the Sovereign and the Prince of Wales during the glittering ceremony at Windsor Castle. Speaking on the Rwanda policy, she said, I do not think we should be sending people to Rwanda. If we look at those countries that have tried offshore processing in the past, it has not worked. I've gone on record as saying that the government's policy is absolutely shameful. I do not understand why these resources we have at our disposal we can't speed up processes and do it here. Our government says it wants to be an important player on the global stage. It talks about global Britain. We have responsibilities internationally that we have signed up to. It's really important that we demonstrate some leadership in terms of speaking to those values, and also in the way that we work and function, that we have seen as lives living those values. See, the problem here is that she's talking. It's almost as if we're speaking to somebody from 20 years ago. I'm laughing at this because it honestly, talking about, responsibilities, international responsibilities, caring for refugees, treating refugees and asylum seekers with respect and dignity. It's like something you would read 20 years ago, not something in post-Brexit Britain. And obviously, that's why it's so outdated, and why it's sad that her words will unfortunately have zero impact on the Tories and Boris Johnson. She's asking why are we doing this? Why is the UK government doing this? It's because, and I said it before, it's about keeping racists and bigots happy. It's about shifting responsibility from Priti Patel onto lawyers. Be angry. Don't be angry with Priti Patel. Be angry with lawyers. Be angry with the European Court of Human Rights. Remember Brexit. Remember Brexit. Remember that thing you voted for back in 2016. Now, we need to implement it by leaving the European Court of Human Rights. Yeah, it's nothing to do with the EU, but it has Europe in the title. That should be enough. And it works. And it is working. And the Brexiteers and the racists and bigots are angry. Not angry with the government anymore. They were angry with Priti Patel for not doing enough, like sending gunboats into the channel and mining the channel as well. They wanted her to do that. And some of them were pretty serious about that. So because she wasn't going to that extreme, well, she's doing this offshoring one, which is extreme. But the fact that it's not working, it's not her fault. It's because these pesky lawyers and these pesky judges, these foreign judges, never, of course, ignore the fact that Britain has a judge. Is a member and it has a judge there, but ignore that fact as well. But it's it's a case of we have someone to blame and we found our culprit. It's quite sad. In a sense, this is like reading something from 20 years ago. The idea that the UK government would act with responsibility, would care about its international image. It's all gone now. I do think it will return. I do think in the future Britain will be respected once again. But at the moment, the Brexiteers are determined to create as much resentment towards the country as possible. So we have our final story for tonight. Julian Assange's extradition from UK to US approved by Home Secretary. Priti Patel has approved the extradition of the WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange to the US, a decision the organisation immediately said would appeal against in the High Court. The case passed to the British Home Secretary last month after the UK Supreme Court ruled that there were no legal questions over assurances given by US authorities on Assange's likely treatment. Oh my goodness. Why wasn't... This is something that I didn't understand, but then now I do, sort of, in a sense. Why didn't Barack Obama pardon him when he left? When you're president, at the very end of your time in office, you get to do the presidential pardons, and the pardons go to all sorts of individuals, some good individuals, some not so good individuals, but they get a presidential pardon and they're let off. Why didn't Obama give Assange one? Because it would have cost him nothing. But then I started to think about it. Well, Obama has a post-presidential career, and he makes a lot of money out of it. And I'm not begrudging him that. He's a free citizen. People are not forced to buy his books or go to his seminars. But maybe this would have, been bad for him politically, in a sense, if he did. I don't know. Anyway, that's a bit of a sidetrack. While Patel has given the green light, WikiLeaks immediately released a statement to say that it would appeal against the decision. Today is not the end of the fight. It said it is only the beginning of a new legal battle. We will appeal through the legal system. The next appeal will be before the High Court. The statement said anyone who cared about the freedom of expression should be deeply ashamed of the Home Secretary that the Home Secretary has approved Assange's extradition. Julian did nothing wrong. He has committed no crime, and he is not a criminal. He is a journalist and a publisher, and he has been punished for doing his job, it said. It was in Priti Patel's power to do the right thing. Instead, she will ever be remembered as the accomplice of the United States in its agenda to turn investigative journalism into a criminal enterprise. Any appeal is likely to focus on grounds such as the right to freedom of expression and whether the extradition request is politically motivated. Patel has been considering whether U.S. extradition request met remaining legal tests, including the promise not to execute him. Assange is being held at Belmarsh Prison in London after a lengthy battle to avoid extradition. At a press conference in London, his wife, Stella Assange, said, "We are not at the end of the road here. We're going to fight this. We're going to use every available avenue. I'm going to use every waking hour fighting for Julian until he's free, until justice is served." You know, I believe that this is something that, you know, I'm not a big fan of David Davis, but this is what David Davis said. Former Cabinet Minister David Davis: "Sadly, I do not believe that Mr. Assange will get a fair trial. These extradition treaties need to be rewritten and give British and American citizens equal rights, identical rights, unlike now." And this is, you know, kudos to David Davis, an idiot when it comes to Brexit, but on other issues, I agree with him 100%. And, you know, there is a real possibility that Assange will be executed when he returns to the United States. And the British government, instead of it doesn't matter whether you agree with him or not. He is not. It's not him as an individual that's the point here. It's the precedent it sets. It's what it's about. It's about whether journalists have the right to stand up to governments, and that has to be protected. But once again, you know, Priti Patel doesn't give a crap. First they come for Assange, then it'll be Max and us. I don't put myself in the same level as Assange, but yeah, but it is a point. Yeah, you know, it's criticize the government, and they will have the power to shut you down. If you continue to do it, they will arrest you. If you continue to do it, they will put you to sleep, in a sense. David Davis was also once an open democracy, and said about the new laws and freedom of information, too surprising. It's just, when it comes to Brexit, he's an idiot, honestly. But on other issues, he's. I think when it came to the refugee to Rwanda, he was on the right side there. When it comes to freedom of expression, in this issue again, he's on the right side. So it's very strange, because when he starts talking about Brexit, it's like a completely different person when he's talking about freedom of expression and the rule of law. Very strange. So guys, we'll have to keep an eye on this story, of course, and hopefully the WikiLeaks wins the appeal. So guys, I want to say, want to wish you a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thanks for all of the super chats. Greatly appreciated. Sorry about the technical issue during the blackout. Beyond my control. Maybe it's because of somebody is watching. My paranoia will go off the scale now. And there it goes again. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll have to go before I'm kicked off completely. Have a great night, guys. Great weekend. Thanks once again. See you soon. And see you at the normal time next Tuesday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Tuesday night. Take care. Good night.